Hello, David.
How you doing, Brett?
Excellent. Yourself?
Good.
Good.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Dave. Oh,
So we're going to hold off for 2 more seconds, everybody. We've got one technical issue we're dealing with, so stand by, everyone.
okay.
Can you guys hear John?
Hey, there we go. Hey, John.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. We got you. All right. I think we are now ready to go. So the regular session of the Cascade School District Board of Directors will now convene via Zoom. The laws governing boards of education require that their work be done where the public can observe their actions. Please remember that this is the board's meeting for the public to observe. Others may participate only with the approval of the board. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
The
of
United
the United States of America and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Brett,
Yes,
you need to formally open the meeting.
we call this meeting to order.
Thank you.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, guest list, Cheryl, we're just moving on, right? All right, then we'll move on to number 4, approval of the minutes of the September 3rd, 2021 meeting.
I move to approve the September 13th, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
second.
Approval of the minutes of September 3rd, 2021 have been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 5, prioritize the agenda. Mr. Drill.
Yeah, if you can hear me okay, I think we
Yep.
can go right down the list. We should be good to go.
All right, wonderful. Then we'll start on 6A, which is the superintendent's report. Mr. Drill.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October meeting. Just real briefly on my report, talked a little bit about enrollment. We are up slightly. We're now getting ready to enter our 6th week of school. And we now have, as of today, 2,566 students at Cascade. That's the highest number of students we've ever had in the history of our school district. A year ago, right around October 1st, 2020, we were at 2441. And on October 1st, 2019, we had 2530. So from 2 years ago, we're about 30 more students than we had 2 years ago, a little over 100 more students than we had last year. Most of our increase appears that we have seen from move-ins. Lots of people have moved into the area. We've also seen a limited number of interdistrict transfers. We will show you that later tonight about how we've handled that. And then we've also seen some uptick in most of the areas, most notably our high school, then Turner, and then our junior high is kind of the areas that we see moving up. In typical fashion, Cloverdale is about the same, along with our Opportunity Center, and Almsville is a little bit low, but I've noticed in the last week, it's slowly moving up, which has been typical of Almsville over the last 7 or 8 years. It starts lower and then it builds over the course of the next couple of months. So we'll see if that holds true. Would like to also let you know tonight that we continue to work at trying to get local control back from the state of Oregon with regard to COVID issues. I met with Representative Moore Green last week. I will be in a meeting with the governor's office, though I don't think the governor will be there, but with her folks that take care of education later on this week, I believe, or it might be Monday next week, to continue to talk about that, being able to fight for the ability to make decisions for ourselves about how we handle stuff. And then finally, tonight, you're going to see a little bit more about COVID cases. A number of school districts have put up information about that or put it out at the board meetings. We are in the process of doing the same thing for you guys as well, so you can see kind of where the COVID cases are. I will reiterate it at that time that we are running about 2% of our population with regard to COVID. A little less maybe than 2%. You got to understand that not only are we talking about students, but all humans. So that includes the 305 to 10 employees that we have as well. So we're right about 2% for COVID cases and about 2.8% for quarantine cases. So when we have people that quarantine, that kind of puts us in that spot. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the board meeting. You're also going to see a budget resolution tonight that we have added. Just so we can begin to make sure that after talking with Scott in the financial area and kind of checking into it, we need to make sure that we reallocate some resources. We already have the money, but we're reallocating some resources so that we can begin to pay for the modular expansion that we're going to use at Turner Elementary. We'd like to do that quickly. We're essentially out of space there. And so, we went for the bond last spring. It didn't happen. So we need to be able to move that now that we see the numbers at Turner and we know that they exist and they are in our first quarter count. We can go ahead and move forward on that. So would like to finally say thank you to all of our staff for being creative when it comes to educating our students, outside activities, outside classrooms, creative lesson plans, connecting with students at the social emotional level. This has been an important piece to how we handle schools. And I think we're doing a great job there. Next month, Mr. Thatcher will give some information about how we did preliminarily with regard to academics. But the preliminary numbers look good. I won't steal that thunder, but it looks really good, particularly at our high school level and how we handle stuff. So questions or comments?
Hey, Darren, I got to ask a question. It shows here that we have 2566 students right now. If we were to look back historically, are we growing at the same rate we've always grown? Are we growing exponentially faster than we did, 5 years ago when we were looking year to year? What's our growth doing compared to historical?
So the first 6 or 7 years that I had this position, I took a look and went back all the way to 1999, and we grew somewhere between 25 to 50 students, and then we would decline by 25 to 50 students. And we were pretty static right around 2,100 to 2,150 students. Right around 2014, 2015, that number started to steadily go up. So we've gone from 2,100, 2,150 to 23 to 2,450, and now to 2,550 over the course of some time. It goes in fits and spurts, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. So I would say there's growth, particularly with the growth in the Turner area and the growth in the Almsville area. And I know both small towns are talking about expansion as well. So my hope is that we see a little bit of the flattening out. That's what a number of folks that handle urban geography talk to us. Portland State actually does a lot of work around urban geography and growth boundaries. They see some flattening for a couple of years. I hope they're right. And then we grow a little bit more. The other thing tonight you'll see is the interdistrict transfer information. We put that in there as well. As we talked about, there was a high watermark for interdistrict transfers about 3 years ago, and we've tried to slow that down as we've come in to deal with that process because of that growth. So it's a balance between the two, but I would say to you, we are on a steady incline up. Some years I think it'll go faster. Other years, my hope is it kind of flattens out a little bit so we have a chance to breathe.
Right. Okay. Good.
Darren, I had a question.
Yeah.
How's our district handling the substitute shortage?
Struggling. There's no question about it. It's a statewide substitute shortage. As I said, talking about being creative, we've seen our administrators and a number of our staff take up their prep time to help across the district K-12. There's no question about it. And our number of our staff are tired. They're working really hard to do that. We have put out a request for a temporary substitute at the secondary level and at the elementary level. So we at least have one person in the hopper. We're going to pay for them to be here every day, which also includes insurance temporarily for the year. I think that's going to help. We have some regular people that we see that are fairly local to us. But we're going to try to essentially have them on payroll for the remainder of the school year to help that. But there is no question that is one of the number one issues that superintendents talk about across the state. There is just no amount of subs. As a matter of fact, they are trying to figure out a way to make it easier. And I think I saw something today in the news about trying to see if they can get some people to do that. In other states, it's fairly easy to do that. Oregon's always been far more difficult, for lack of a better word, or have higher standards, depending on how you want to look at it, about making sure that they have qualified people subbing. But right now, that's a tough situation for sure.
Darren, then I had another question, but you said we might handle it later in the meeting here on just the out of district transfers.
Correct.
Just get a little bit more detail on how you might be changing that in terms of the capacity constraints and the COVID protocols and all that. We can talk about now or maybe later
Well, I can show you the numbers later, David, but what I can tell you right now is, right, it's always a balance. What we have said in the last 2 or 3 years is we're going to start to limit those interdistrict transfer numbers. When you have graduation rates as high as we have, and you have good news at the elementary level, as we've had over the last few years at every one of our elementaries, we have people that want to join, right? Want to join us. And then ironically, as people have joined us, they turn around and say, well, we don't want any more people in. We're happy to have joined, but we don't want other people in. And it's kind of an interesting balance. At the same time, every year, right, we make some assumptions about who is going to show up, and we need to make sure we find the balance. We're right around 23, now 24 to 26 average in our elementaries per classroom. We have 1 or 2 classrooms that are higher. We have a number of classrooms that are lower than that average, but you need that average to be able to pay for the resources that we have for our kids. So you've got to, it's a mathematical equation. You got to try to find the balance. If we were to cut back on all interdistrict transfers, it would certainly hurt us financially. So you've got to, I think, thin that over time. You'll see the numbers as we showed a little bit later in the board report. So there's a balance to it. There's no other way around it. If you were to cut it in 1 year, right, we've made some promises, particularly with people that brought in students and then they want their younger sibling to join them. Families can't have 1 3rd grader go to one school and have a kindergartner go somewhere else. So we try to find that balance as best we can. The other thing that we can talk about is the intra-district transfer from Almsville to Turner, or Turner to Almsville, Cloverdale to Almsville. Lots of times we do that for our families because they need daycare on the other side of our district. Our district is not small geographically, so they go from one side or the other. They work in a specific place. We've tried to help them out, and we can begin to have that conversation, particularly in the spring, about do we limit those kinds of those kinds of transfers in the process. So I don't know if that helps answer the question, but it's kind of the conversations that we've been having about that. Our numbers are a little less than last year with regard to transfers in, and we've always been able to, not always, but in the last few years, we've noticed the transfers out have gotten smaller and smaller. Fewer and fewer people want to leave what we're doing. Or they found the place they want to be and they want to stay. So we are certainly going to have those conversations moving forward. And again, it's always a little bit of a guess.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Drill.
Okay,
Moving on.
just real quickly, Brett, the second part of it is the actual numbers.
Okay.
If you look at the report, I've also attached the breakdown of each school, how many students are in each building, that kind of thing.
Okay.
All right.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Questions on that? All right, moving on. 6B, Financial Director's Report. Mr. Pillar.
Good evening. I have quite a few things to go over with you tonight, so I'll try and be brief and efficient. But if you have any questions at all, just interrupt me and stop me, and we'll talk about those and get those addressed. The first thing is your financial report, which you get every month. You'll see on the revenue side, we are tracking fairly normally on that revenue side. And on the expenditure side, I wanted to highlight the fact that we have quite a bit more, about $955,000 more in expenditures relative to the revenue. For all those summer programs, the state gave us 3 different grants. We had to match some of that grant with money with our own money, our revenue, and we've done that. However, we have not had the opportunity to draw those grants down. So that figure that you look at in column L, row 19, that end of the year figure that we always kind of monitor, it's usually a little lower in the first part of the year. It rises up a little abnormally high in the middle of the year, and then it settles down to the ending fund balance figure that we like to see around 3 million or so. That number is artificially low because we have not drawn down the grant revenue as of when the report was done. So I just wanted to highlight that to you. When I sent this out to Mr. Drill, he looked at that number very carefully, and I bet it was probably up in board book 5 minutes before he was in my office going, why is that so low? But it's artificially low. It will be back to normal next month. let's see, as we're talking about in enrollment figures, we predict in the finance side, we tell the state how many students we think we're going to have for the following year. We make that prediction initially in the month of December for the next year. So for us, when we get these little spikes in enrollment, it's a little bit hard to predict. I am a fairly conservative person by nature. So I typically, kind of guess a little bit low. And the figure that we are receiving state school fund revenue now is approximately 55 kids less than we have in the classroom. So, and if you remember, last year was kind of an anomaly, but the year prior to that, we faced pretty much the same issue, right? We had predicted less kids than we actually had. And what the state does to adjust that, they wait for about 6 months until all the figures kind of settle in. Then we tell them again how many students we have. They check on their systems to make sure that we're being accurate, and then they make up for that. So we should be seeing an increase in the state school fund support, our largest source of revenue. We should see that hit likely in January or February. Last 2 years ago, it was a little bit late, but we did make up for it. So just so you know, I think we're getting roughly about 1.7 million in state school fund revenue each month. I would expect to see that to go up to about 1.85, going forward from here. Is there any questions on that? Okay, so the next thing, obviously, when you have more kids, we're kind of at an emergency status in terms of getting some space, particularly out in Turner, to house all those kids. We have kids that are eating lunch outside. We've got some classroom space outside. Of course, the COVID protocols have demanded that we limit the number of kids in each classroom with space and those types of things. Just today, we received information on how much a 4-unit modular is going to cost. And Mr. Drill and myself and Tom Lovell met today to discuss kind of our plans for getting that to happen in a quick way. When we're dealing with state funds, particularly at the level that we're dealing with, we need to make sure that we follow the protocol standards in terms of the purchasing and procurement rules, but we also have to do it in a very fast way. And fortunately, Salem Kaiser has put out a couple of years ago a contract for modular buildings that we can piggyback upon. Just got confirmation of that this evening. So what we're going to do is piggyback on that contract, and that allows us to get a building from a local vendor at a fairly reduced price, at a good price, without having to go out for a competitive bid for that. So that has been super helpful for us because it's going to speed up the process of getting that built by roughly about 30 to 45 days. In order to do that effectively, we also have to move some money around. So in your board packet, there'll be a resolution that I put together again just today. So I apologize for not getting it out to you sooner, but some of this information is coming to us very quickly. We put together a resolution that moves some money from a support function to a facilities function. When you buy modular classrooms, you construct facilities, those types of things, you have to put your planned expenditures in a certain broad function category. Now, we don't do a lot of that kind of work. And when the bond failed, we just didn't have enough money in those particular areas to move forward. So your resolution that moves that money in the in an amended appropriation level, there is actually no change in the amount of revenue that we're getting. We're using construction excise tax revenue, of which, fortunately for us, because of the growth that we've been experiencing, our balance in the construction excise revenue fund is roughly around $2 million. So I put a proposal together that moves $820,000 of that $2 million into facilities. Now, we're not going to use all of that for this particular project. We will use a chunk of it. I believe that the building itself is $650,000. It's pretty expensive. But this just authorizes us to spend that. You authorize the whole appropriation during your budget process every year. This just adjusts that. So are there any questions to that appropriation level report that I sent to you?
Hey, Scott, before this, the need for this mobile came along, or this modular unit, what were we going to use that 650,000 for?
We put that money in what we call the support function. And so it's in facilities, but it was for buying things that were supportive of education. For instance, things like desks.
Okay.
Other things that we are allowed to spend money on in construction excise tax, but we purposely did not put that into facilities, the big building type things, because we were hopeful and we had an outlook that we were going to pass a bond. So that kind of stuff goes, you can buy textbooks with it, you can buy computer equipment with it, you can buy desks, you can do all the things that fill a classroom after you build the classroom. We just now have to adjust it so we can build the classroom with that money instead.
So is it fair to say that there will be a hole somewhere else by moving this 650, or is this, are we leaving something else hanging out there that needs to be filled that isn't, because we're taking this money and putting it to these modular units?
No, that's a really good question. And the answer to that is no. If I've also included in my board report, there's a sheet of the construction excise tax expenses that we have spent over the years. And you will see that over in the last, since 1819, we've only spent $141,000 in construction excise tax revenue. So we've been kind of purposefully saving that for a rainy day. We do spend it on some things, parking lot upgrades. We've purchased a lot of desks recently with those funds, but for the most part, that money has been there for situations such as this. So
Okay.
This is really essentially, without a bond, this is our next best bet.
Okay.
All
Any
right.
other questions?
I have a question, Brett. I don't know if Scott is the one to ask this to, and I don't think Cindy's talking tonight, but where are we at with the roof at Almsville? If we're talking about monies to go to school, where are we with that?
Well, I'm not sure, I don't want to interrupt anyone, but we do have money set aside for the roof repair at Almsville in this year's budget. So
Okay.
it would likely be coming out of the general fund or our building and site fund. I can't point to it right now and say, because I was taken aback by the question, but we do have money put away for that. So whatever that cost is going to be, it's something that we're going to have to incur and pay for out of general fund expenses or building and site.
Okay, and is that a plan for the future, or do we wait till disaster happens, or what's the plan on that? I guess
Ruth.
that would probably be more toward Darren.
Ruth, we fix it as it goes, right? So we've talked about particularly the 3-5 buildings roof over and over and over again. And if we have an issue with it, then we go ahead and fix it. Obviously, when it rains hard, we find out quickly. Joe finds out right away if there are issues with that, or if there's issues underground, as we've found out the last couple of times it's rained hard. So then we employ getting folks in line and go from there. During the summer, we have it checked. We have all the roofs checked. Joe makes sure that all the roofs look functional and there's no issues. But like everything else, right, when the rains come, you find out where there might be some leaks. So
Right.
we have talked about this roof before, which is one of the reasons why we talked about the demolition of 3-5 in our bond. So we'll go back to continuing to patch the holes and go from there. But every second, third, or fourth year, I can't remember which, Joe essentially comes and says it's time to repatch this section of the roof or that section of the roof where we see the most leaks. So we catch it as it goes. It's kind of how it is.
I think it's great that we're looking at modulars for higher population at Turner, but we just need to make sure that our other grade schools' needs are being met too.
I
So,
agree.
Yeah.
Yes, completely agree. I have one other thing to bring you to your attention today. Little did you know when you probably signed up to be board members that you were also members of the local contract review board. So many smaller districts in the state of Oregon have their board members be members of the local contract review board, which usually only gathers, and you put your LCRB hat on, maybe once a year. The last time we did this meeting was about 3 years ago, excuse me, when we were approving the RFP for the CMGC contract, just to go out for that CMGC, which is I'll talk a little bit about that, remind you what that's a building process, how we go about participating in actually fixing the seismic grant and using that seismic work. But that happens about every 3 years or so. And tonight you have such a meeting. Again, with COVID, everything is going very fast and very furious. And so again, I apologize for not giving you a lot of heads up on this, but our design engineers for the seismic project had suggested, and there's some cost savings or potential cost savings to us if we have a CMGC, a general contractor, early in the process while they're building their construction documents for the seismic upgrade. And so, in an attempt to save some money in a very up and down financial market as it relates to building products, we decided to push forward and get the RFP for the CMGC out as soon as possible. And in order to do that, you have to be your contract review board, open up a hearing, hear from any potential person that wants to speak on the local contract review board process and the CMGC hearing. And hearing none, you would likely close that meeting and then pass the resolution. I can tell you that we've been advertising the findings of fact in the Daily Journal of Commerce up in Portland, and we've received no input or no requests to review or questions on the findings of fact. That findings of fact document essentially states to everyone that we will receive some benefits financially and time savings in terms of using the CMGC process rather than a traditional design build process. The differences are pretty clear. You've utilized the CMGC process in the last 2 seismic upgrades. For a district our size, where we do have a few people that know a little bit about construction, we don't have a whole construction department, and we don't have a full-time construction manager on board to act as the general contractor. What the CMGC does is allows us to mitigate some of the risks that we find in a traditional design build, where we don't have to go out for bid for everything from sheetrockers to plumbers to electricians for a project such as this. We go out to bid for the CMGC. So we go out for one RFP. The RFP is in draft form. It's 92 pages. And that will hit the streets Tuesday or Wednesday. Hopefully we get some response. The last time we went out for a bid like this, we got 4 respondents that wanted to be our CMGC. We chose one, and then that didn't work out. We ended up going with Woodburn Construction, and they guided us through the process of the seismic upgrade at Cloverdale. Both the seismic upgrades that we've done so far have come in on time and on budget. The Cloverdale went over budget by, I believe, $2,800 because we had a very last minute change order doing an overhang. But the process for CMGC has served us very well, and it's a good fit for us because without staff, Joe and Tom and even myself at sometimes putting in a hard hat on there, we're not total experts in this, and so it's good to hire somebody that we know and can trust and has a good history in terms of doing seismic upgrades. But that's a big process. So I want to open that up and answer any questions that any of you might have about the CMGC process and why we're going that route.
I think my question would be, what building is next? Is it the high school or the junior high?
We're doing the junior high. There's two sections of the junior high that we had put in a request for funding for. The section that we actually didn't expect to get funding for was the one that we got funding for. So we got about $2.1 million to do the horseshoe area just outside of the district office. And in fact, it includes part of the district office in this upgrade. And that is the area that does the original building where the office is, and that kind of horseshoe area just outside of the district office. So it's essentially some of our projects have been wrapping the building very tightly. This is a project where we're going to secure the roof and drive the energy down into the ground. So it's kind of it's a little different style of work than what we've done at Turner, and more akin to what we've done at Cloverdale.
Ruth, it includes the 6th grade wing, all of the 6th grade wing in
Okay.
the junior high.
So will it go junior high and then move to high school and then eventually do what you can at Almsville?
We put in for a request, right? When we have engineers and Scott works with them about what we think would be wise for us to have seismically upgraded. We turn it into the state and then they get to decide. Their state engineers decide which ones we get, or we don't have any control over that. So
Okay.
that's the area that we're kind of stuck with. So as Scott said, we kind of thought they would give us one area that might have included the gym in the junior
Yeah.
high, but they
Yeah.
gave us this area. So that's the one we work on.
Okay.
The money is free to us. I mean, there's some not free. Scott has a lot to do and Tom will too, but the process has worked well for us at Turner and then again at Cloverdale. And we've come in essentially on time and on budget for the last 2 times.
I have a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Ramey.
When I understand just enough to be dangerous, I think I'm familiar with the process. I think I understand the advantages of the CMGC approach. And in this case, I support those completely. And I have no doubt that it's going to work well. I'm wondering, ultimately, I'm glad to support it. And the findings of fact, I've read them carefully, and I think that I support all of those. But ultimately, who is it on staff? You know, when we claim an exception to the rules and we go this route, it's based on the finding of fact, and the board signs off on that. And I want to be very, very careful to do a very, very good job there. Who on staff makes sure that we really come through on the requirements, you know, the obligations that we have when we choose this path? Is that you, or is that Darren or Tom Lovell? Who's responsible to see that we do that?
Well, I believe that I take a point role in that. Tom and Darren and I are very communicative throughout the process. Tom is the person with the feet on the ground. He is at the site every day, and he and I are at the site for the site meetings with the general contractor every week, as well as our engineers. And so there's a number of people there that are there every week. And then I come back and present, you know, as the process moves along. It typically occurs, the actual construction typically occurs when school is out. So it's a little quieter on campus, and your meetings are a little bit quieter in general. But we give full reports as to, you know, how that process is working out for us. But I would say that I'm probably your point person on making sure that all the rules are followed and the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Okay, I appreciate it. And a follow-up, if I could.
Sure.
I think I understand all the reasons to go this way. And I support it completely. What are the reasons not to go this way? What is the best argument for the traditional bid process? You know, in other words, if somebody was going to say this is the wrong direction, what's the best argument for that?
I think the best argument for it, and it works a little bit better in larger districts, is the fact that the theory is that if you have 10 or 15 companies bidding to be your sheetrocker or bidding to be your plumber, the cost likely will be lower, because you will be forced essentially to take the low bid. The counter argument to that cost factor is that with the CMGC process, you have a guaranteed maximum price. So from a financial standpoint, I know how much it's going to cost before we actually pick up a single hammer. And that's better for our district when we have a fixed cost in terms of how much money we have from a grant. So with that low bid and the potential for lower cost by getting a number of people bidding, if you don't have a number of people bidding, like in today's construction environment where it's a little bit difficult to even get sheetrockers to put in a bid. Yeah. The risk reward to that, in my opinion, and other people's opinions that are kind of peer groups that are doing the same type of stuff, is that risk reward isn't quite worth it. So we could save some money. I mean, most people would say, a design build is probably the cheapest and the most, I guess, quickest, maybe in some regards, way to go. But for a situation like ours, I really feel the CMGC, I could argue that pretty much to my grave.
So John, the other issue is that a couple of things. One, we have Tom and Joe who know most of the pieces of that. And if Joe doesn't quite get part of it, or Tom doesn't quite get part of it, we have a couple of more people on our maintenance staff that do. So we can kind of consult with them. The second part of it is Scott's been through a number of these things, whether it's been a construction bond or a seismic upgrade in his previous 2 districts. So they've got that. And now that I've got a couple of seismic upgrades under my belt, we kind of know what questions to ask. So that kind of helps. A few years ago, Staten went the other direction because they just didn't have people on staff that had that kind of expertise. So they spend a little bit more money up front to get the folks, but it's a little bit like, I'm gonna just pay for the whole service to get done the other way. This is a little more hands-on, which allows us to stop momentarily and say, hey, can we fix that little piece of it? Or they've ripped off part of like at Turner, they ripped off part of it and realized there was rot underneath it. So it allowed us to go in and talk with the folks that are building to fix it at that time instead of going back later. So there's advantages. I know that large school districts kind of go the other direction because they might have $100 or $150 million bond and they've got 5 projects going on, 5 different buildings at once. So it's easier to go the other way. For us in a smaller situation, this works better for us. And we've got some people on staff that really do actually understand the process. It helps.
I really do appreciate the significance of that, and I support it completely. And I have gratitude. It would be easy to begin to think that this is about numbers when it's about human beings, right? And we're counting on you, the taxpayers are counting on you to stretch every dollar and to create facilities that truly are places of excellence and high quality learning. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I appreciate your work.
Well, thank you very much. And that I appreciate those comments, and I take that responsibility very seriously.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Pillar?
No, that's all for me. I'm sorry to hog your meeting tonight.
No, I appreciate it. Any other questions for Scott? All right, thank you very much. Moving on, we've got C, High School Principals Report. Mr. Rasmussen.
Good evening, folks. Thanks for having me this evening. You have my report in front of you. I really just want to quickly highlight a couple of things. One, last week we were able to host homecoming. And in the midst of our pandemic, that is no small feat. I really want to thank Megan Torres, our student activities director, and student council, and all the staff who worked so hard to make that happen. We really tried to give kids the fullest experience as well as abiding by all of the guidelines and protocols to us, to our best understanding. So we were creative. We reduced the size of assemblies. We went outside. We rented tents for outside. We did all kinds of things to make it work. And it was fun to see the kids have a lot of fun doing these fun activities, whether it was dress up days or practicing lip sync or doing the things. It was just a great time. And so kudos to our student council and Megan Torres for making that happen. It was outstanding. I just real quickly also want to mention that we are also working super hard at our COVID protocols. When we have cases pop up at the high school, within our high school community, we're researching those, trying to find out, are there links or connections? And, you know, knock on wood, to this point, we are not seeing those connections. We are seeing these come from outside, being from family or social groups outside the school. Kids come to school, they report that they or someone in their family has COVID, and then we look for connections at school. Were they with a group at school or in a classroom? Was a potential spread? Because if so, we need to lock down a group of kids or quarantine a group of kids or staff members. And so far, we haven't seen that. So we're grateful for that. There could be a day that could happen, but at this point, there has not been. We're grateful, and we'll continue to be diligent about that, because kids' attendance in person at school is vital. We're reaping the benefits of that. We're holding parent-teacher conferences tonight as we speak, and kids and parents are meeting with teachers, and it's done so much better and so much more effectively in person. So we're excited about that. Any questions or thoughts? Or
I just wanted to say good job. I've heard nothing but positive, and you're doing a great job.
we've got a great staff here at the high school, and it's easy to walk in and say, let's go, and they go. And so it's a great place. So
Yeah.
we're fortunate here at Cascade School District.
Well, we're in good hands.
I will say, having a student in your school, I do get an email, it seems like regularly, from you announcing that there's another COVID case. And I want to thank you and appreciate your diligence in following through on that and keeping us aware.
Yeah. Now, a few parents have said to me, well, Pete, I got your every other once a week email, and either they're reading it or they've stopped reading them, but required by law to send those. So we're doing it. You'll keep getting them, and we'll keep you informed as best we can.
I know it's not a joke, but I assume at this point no, I won't assume that. Maybe you're just cutting and pasting at this point. They seem to come out an awful lot, but nice job.
Well, we're doing what we're supposed to do. So you bet.
All right, thank you. Any questions
Thanks,
for Mr. Rasmussen? No. All right, wonderful. Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
guys.
Rasmussen. Moving on, we've got junior high school principal's report. Hang on, I'm almost there.
I think
Ms.
I'm
Monday.
here. Hello, how are you this evening?
Fabulous.
Debbie.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Just a couple things. I think you have my report. Mrs. Bielenberg, I have to give her major kudos. She applied for a grant and was able to take 4 science classes up to a fish hatchery, and the kiddos got a great outdoor experience. I attached pictures for you to see. They got to help collect data for the fish hatchery, and they just had a great outdoor experience. It was kind of like a mini outdoor school in the making, and we can't wait till outdoor school actually gets to happen. And the blessing is it could not have rained harder here at school, but they somehow lucked out and didn't get rained on. So they had a great day to go. Couple other things, Mr. Lang, have to give him major kudos. He helped orchestrate the creation of our outdoor classroom. He ordered sails, and it's not like your pop-up, which is going to, collapse after a few uses. And the kids are outdoor using it and experiencing, getting classrooms outside, and I've seen quite a few teachers using this outdoor space, and it's been great. And the last thing, I have to give major applause to my teachers. Like you mentioned, we are definitely short of substitutes, and Meg is sneaking in classrooms left and right and begging people to help teach. And most of the time they will step up and help us out. So that has been great. Mrs. Gailey and I have also been subbing in classrooms when needed, but we're getting there. We're figuring things out, and the teachers are working really hard, and I definitely throw them a round of applause for stepping up and helping us out this year. Any questions?
I do have a question I want to ask about Miss Bielenberg's salmon watch experience. As I fish on the North Santiam, it said it was hypothesized if it was a healthy river. What was the hypothesis? Yes or no?
Yes, it is a good
All
river.
right.
Yeah,
Good to hear.
Mr. Ball went up there. I think he was eyeballing where the fish were too. So
Wonderful.
yes,
Wonderful. That's good to hear. Thank you.
yes.
Any other questions?
I just also wanted to say what a great job Debbie's doing.
Oh, thank
I hear
you.
nothing but great reviews and
Thank you. We have a
Yeah.
lot of new staff, but they're
Yeah.
working really hard
I
and they've
know.
been great additions. So thank you.
yes, good job.
Thank you.
Likewise, Debbie, great job. I did have one question in terms of outdoor school. Looks like it's been rescheduled now for April. It's about like last year. I think we did the same thing.
We did it in May last year, so it'll be a little bit earlier right now, but with bus driver shortages and everything, we were a little apprehensive about trying to get everybody up and to make sure that we are keeping everybody safe right now. We thought, let's hold off until we, know we can do it again as effectively as we did it last year. And the kids had a great experience and it couldn't have been better last year. So
Yeah, great. Is there a dates in April or week in April that we have?
I think it's around the 11th or so of April. So we'd love to see you up there helping in the kitchen again.
I'll get up there, do some dishes or whatever they do these days.
Oh, lots of dishes. Yep, lots and lots of dishes.
David, maybe you can drive the bus.
Oh, they'll
All
sing
right.
for you a lot. You'll
Any
hear
other
lots of
questions?
songs.
All right. Thanks, Debbie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
All right, moving on. We've got 6E, Elementary Principals Report. We've got Mr. Dyer and Ms. Iverson.
Ready. Okay, well, I'll start alphabetically. I'll start. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. You have your board, the report in front of you. A couple things I want to highlight. I haven't talked to you guys since last year, so I want to talk a little bit about summer enrichment and what we did at Cloverdale. Well, actually, a lot of it's in the report, but I really wanted to highlight our summer reading program and our library. Just to make sure that it was clear, we opened our library up 2 days a week all summer long, from July all the way through August, so kids should be able to check out books. Up until this time, Cloverdale kids or just anybody around this community, there's not really a public library to go to. You either have to go 25 minutes into Staten or you'd have to go 25 minutes into Salem, and that's tough for families to do. So we were committed to opening it up 2 days a week. We opened it up for 2 hours at a time. We did STEM activities. We did reading incentives. We had snack time. We made volcanoes, paper mache, tie-dyed. It was a really, really fun time. Kids logged, I think, over 10,000 minutes read. We did a culminating field trip at the Wings and Waves in McMinnville. It was just a lot of fun. Through the summertime grants, we purchased $10,000 worth of books for our library, brand new books for struggling readers, and we just kind of revamped our library. Awesome. Carrie Ann Grams, though, was a huge part of that. She was the one that kind of took the lead on that. We had 3 high school kids that were high school helpers with that program. My mom helped out in the library, and that was really cool. And I was able to do some things as well. And like I said, it was just a lot of fun. And it was just, like I said, it was a lot of fun. Oh, also we had a lot of donations. Ross Food in Staten, they donated snacks. Every week we just went there and they just gave us whatever they had. And so like one week we had like 20 boxes of Lucky Charms, and we had fruit snacks and water bottles and Gatorades and whatever. They just gave us all this food for free. It was really nice. And then Figaro's and McDonald's donated gifts and stuff like that. So it was a community project coming together. Talking about community, that was the other thing I really wanted to highlight, it's just really and Cloverdale's always had that tradition of a strong community. But right now, Cloverdale, the community is really stepping up. And it's really fun to be a part of that and to kind of help lead that on. And so like we had a campus cleanup here on a Saturday a couple weeks ago, and we had about 15, 20 parents come with shovels and edgers and just helped out. We had blowers and power washers. We were cleaning windows. We put bark dust down, and we just really made our school look great. And that was just the parents coming together, like, what can we do to make our campus look awesome? And they did that, and that was really cool. The other thing when we talk about community is I can't say enough about my parents and just of what they do. For me, it's awesome when, if I have to call a kid about discipline, the question is not so much, what did you do to my kid, or putting the blame on us, is how can we support you at home? And that's something that we talked about a lot through letters, and they're really buying into it. And it makes our lives so much easier when the parents are working with us, not against us. And it's really making a lot of differences in kids' lives. And so that's really cool. And then also they're constantly asking, how can we help? What can we do to help Cloverdale? What can we do to help the school? And then finally, I want to end on one of the other things that I'm really happy about with our staff and our teachers, because they are working their tails off, like everybody will tell you in education right now. Teachers are working hard and extremely hard. And so I really just want to take the time to say that, because they are tired and they are working. One of the things that we're trying to do here at Cloverdale is we are trying to be very strategic and targeted in everything that we do. So when we look at behaviors, we are being very targeted about what behaviors we're targeting with kids. We're setting goals, we're meeting on them weekly, and we're tracking that to make sure that we're getting these kids the help that they need. And so they can develop good habits. And that's just through a lot of different trainings throughout the year that the Cascade School District has kind of given us. And so it's been very beneficial, and we're moving kids in the right direction, which has been awesome. The other thing that we're targeted on is overall writing. Writing has been somewhere where I've always wanted to improve. And so we have kids writing. And so every Tuesday we are PLCing around writing. And it's really awesome because we just talk about writing and how we can improve writing. And so like right now, when you walk into classrooms in the afternoon, you see every kid writing. I have second graders writing 1 to 2 paragraphs every day or every other day. And they are writing constantly. Fifth grade, they're writing pages. I mean, they're writing 2 to 3 pages a week. And so we are just writing all the time, and it's really cool to see that. So that's it right now. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dyer. Any questions?
I just wanted to say, again, I'm a broken record tonight, but Brian just does such a great job over there, as we knew he would when he left the junior high. He's so creative and so caring toward kids, and he's just thriving over there, and the students are a product of that.
Yeah. Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, no, it's the staff. I mean, honestly, the staff is pretty amazing, pretty cool community.
Yes, I agree.
Brian, I also like your "it's not luck but hard work" philosophy you're using. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
It's
Okay.
fun.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
Thank you.
Moving on, Ms. Iverson.
Well, hello, how are you?
Fabulous. Welcome.
Thank you. And I just want to start off with a thank you to Tom Lovell, Scott, and Darren Drill for making a move on these modulars. When Turner reached the milestone of 409 students, we had some hard decisions to make, and taking our last available space, which was the cafeteria, for response to intervention literacy, RTI, which RTI is viewed as number 2 in the most research-based bang for your buck to do with kids. And moving it to the cafeteria was a hard choice, but it was either that or give up part of our gym for a couple hours a day. And I want to thank the community for being patient with us as we turn the play shed and the wedding tent into a cafeteria. The upside is it does reduce any exposures to COVID by eating outside, because eating inside has its own list of rules and regulations. So I'm very thankful that the community has been patient with that. So some of the highlights, other than the big news about responding to our unprecedented growth, is we have an incredible math program that we're rolling out to all the elementary schools. And I included in the newsletter the diagnostic tool, which we've never had anything like that. If you take a look at that graph, you can see one of our own 3rd graders at Turner, and you can actually, for the first time, have an assessment tool that tells us exactly where they are at grade level. You can see that this student in 2 areas is at a 2nd grade level, but in 2 other areas is at beginning or emerging 3rd grade. So we have a diagnostic tool now so that we can better teach the kids. And there's also an individualized computer aspect where the kids spend 45 minutes a week working at their own pace, so that when they get to math classes like Vicky Remy in the high school, they'll be better prepared for math. So we are very excited about this rollout and addition of this new iReady curriculum. Other big news at Turner, other than getting ready for our growth and the math curriculum, is again echoing how hard everybody is working. I couldn't have asked for a better partner in this endeavor as Sarah Federico. She's really not an assistant principal. She is my co-leader in every way. And I rely on her for her elementary experience and just her skill in working with staff. So thanks to Sarah and for hiring an additional administrator at Turner. We really started off the year in our new positions with a bang. Like Brian mentioned, we had an incredible summer program. When I managed Measure 98, I always said, money does make a difference in education if it's put in the right direction, and that's right to kids. We had an unprecedented grant opportunity with the summer enrichment programs. Turner served 71% of its population at the summer camp. Our 3-week camp had 3 different themes and involved everything from rockets to an African dance troupe to drumming to about anything you could imagine. It really was a great opportunity not only to get kids back to where they need to be at school, but also a chance for us to get to know the kids prior to entering the school year. And when we weren't involved in the day at summer camp, we were busily setting up outdoor classrooms with the help of John Iverson. We have log and learn, tent talks, and soon we will have a boardroom, which, weather permitting, we have teachers that have completely bought into the idea of the outdoor school year round, or at least when the weather permits, and they are taking their classes outside. We couldn't go up to the Pack Saddle for the annual field trip last week, so the Pack Saddle came to us. Marion County Conservation set up different stations in our beautiful backyard of Turner Elementary and used Mill Creek as their science project area. So it really is an exciting time to be at Turner. And I am so grateful for this opportunity for a challenge, but also the best job in the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Iverson. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, Lisa, on the chart, it said that your population is 405 and you said 409. So did you get 4 new students just this week?
No, last time the population data I have is 409.
Okay, because I know Turner has a large number of transfers each year. Where are we currently with that percentage wise? I'm just curious. Has that gone down or up or?
I'm not sure what it was in the past. We actually had a list from Cheryl and we went over that and we're just under about 40%. We have about 150, 20 of those are staff, and then the rest are a collection of students from various districts.
Okay. And is that, so you don't have a percentage of in-district transfers versus out-of-district transfers?
I don't have the percentage. I know that, Darren, is that in your report that you have with a breakdown of the transfers? I do have a report that shows Almsville, but again, that goes back to our 5th grade too.
Sure. We have the interdistrict transfer information tonight, Ruth, for just transfers from out of area to in area. We can work on getting you that information. But Lisa's comment about the number is over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. It's not in 1 year, right? It's over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. And by the way we count it, after 1 year, they are our kids. So that's kind of how we deal with that. It's the numbers that you will see is it year by year versus a cumulative amount of how many students we have. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but we can certainly break it down in a different way. What we've done for the board in the past is say how many people coming from other districts, right? And how many people are leaving our district. There are kids that go to Turner that are from Almsville and Cloverdale, and then we have a few that are from Turner that go to Cloverdale and Almsville as well. So, but we can get those numbers if that's what you're interested in.
Okay. All right, Lisa, I do have one quick question. Can you explain real quick what the iReady math program is, just like 30,000 foot view?
Yeah, the iReady math program is and it has the best assessment tools that are available. So I could look, for instance, this weekend, I was examining the 5th grade class. I know exactly how many 5th graders are at grade level, 1 year above, or 1 or even 2 years behind. And it also comes with an individualized plan where the students can work at a computer at their own pace. So let's say a student shows that they're 1 year above grade level, they can actually go on the computer program and the program will give them exactly what they need to work forward at their level. And it's definitely, we had a math committee that worked for a year on researching the best program. And I do believe that they selected the best one available.
And this may not be for you, but do you know, are all of the schools, all 3 elementaries using the iReady math program?
Yes, and what's really exciting is we're all working together. In fact, on Friday, we had a training at Almsville, and it was wonderful for me to sit with the Almsville administration and with Brian and just learn as much as possible. I feel like we are helping each other and working together really well toward rolling out this new curriculum, as well as how to form really solid and productive professional learning communities so that we can get this information to our teachers.
You kind of stole my backup question there. I was going to ask if you're all working together, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I also had a question about the iReady math. This is Iverson too. And maybe Mr. Thatcher was to it as well. But is that diagnostic tool assessment that you showed us, that slide? Thank you for that. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You say that's the main advantage of this math program, or is the methodology or the way you teach the math more or less the same, and it's just has this added feature of diagnostic assessment? Is that the main advantage to it, or is the actual teaching methodology different? I mean, is it still Common Core type math teaching?
Yeah, Matt, do you want to talk to that a little further? You researched it more in depth.
Yeah, I actually would. So yes, I think there are 3 strands there. One is it is aligned to the state and national standards, originally called Common Core, but as those standards morph, this iReady curriculum is tailored towards that. Then, as Lisa mentioned, there's the diagnostic piece, which 3 times a year, all the students are put through a diagnostic on a computer, and then their strengths and weaknesses are assessed. And then there is time throughout the week where staff can put students on independently to work on their specific weaknesses. So those are the big pieces there. And so again, one thing that Lisa did mention is that a math committee spent a whole year basically trying to figure out, as far as which ones are approved by the state, meets our needs the best and reaches the students where they are. I would say another piece that makes this curriculum stand out above the others, and Lisa mentioned this real briefly, is the access to ongoing training. A lot of times we take a math curriculum or any kind of curriculum and kind of throw it at teachers, and then they're not able to get the support that they need. And so far we've had 2 real extensive trainings with experts from Curriculum Associates, who are the creators of this iReady Math, who help walk us through that and then are available ongoing. Another great piece is that we've also hired 2 math coaches to help our teachers walk through this. One of them is Katie Ranzoni. Many of you know, a long time great math teacher at the junior high. And the second one is Shannon Stinnett, who was an elementary teacher at Turner and then in the state and district before us, and again, brings great strength. So I would say just the curriculum in and of itself isn't necessarily magic, but the support systems that they and we have put in place, the best bang for the buck and the best tool for us.
All right. Thank you for expanding on that.
All right. Any other questions? Wonderful. Thank you.
I have an observation.
Yes.
Sorry. Mrs. Iverson, I want to observe that it is one thing to have every day feel like outdoor school, and I can tell you're doing that. It's another thing to have high expectations for academic performance. That's a separate thing. What you are pulling off there is doing both of those things at the same time, and that is truly remarkable. And what you're doing is remarkable. And I will be watching to see that these classrooms show up quickly and land where you need them to land so that you can keep going on that. And your community is very appreciative.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Ramey, I might say, I think there was a time when you were an elementary teacher. I'm sure we could get you licensed again because we need subs. Sarah and I are, so I would be happy to have you anytime. We need kindergarten the end of this week. So
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Good
Appreciate
job.
it. All right, moving on. Special Service Director's Report, Mr. Drill.
Yeah, so for this evening, Ms. Johnson can't be with us. So real quickly in her report, a couple of things that she talked about in our admin meeting today. One was and noted the idea that, again, we continue to go up in the size for special education services, which as we grow makes some sense. But the difference is that 15.4% of the students in our district are now under special ed with regard to special education. So lots of different variations of special education, of course, but that continues to stretch our limits and make sure that we have to work with those kids all the way across the board. So we're doing that. We're working really hard at it. The second piece is under where it says recovery services. After we learned some more about what kids out of school have done or not done over a period of time, it did affect some of our students disproportionately more than others. One group of kids that COVID and not having regular classes kind of affected was special education students. So recovery services is that piece that we are now being required to take a look at. So for example, how did a special education student do as compared to a regular education student in what they lost? If they lost more than the regular education student did, then we need to provide over the next 3 years recovery services. So she was talking with our administrators today about how that works, what that process looks like, and how it is we're going to address that. So she wanted to make sure that you guys understood that part of it. And she said she will be back at her next regular scheduled meeting if you have any additional questions directly for her. Questions for me?
Darren, maybe you can answer this. Is 15.4 of the student population, is that pretty typical of most districts?
It's higher than average, but it's more typical of districts in rural areas.
Okay.
That seems to be a little more of the average. They used to say 11% is average, but that's way too old. Unfortunately, the feds and at some level the state continues to fund on 11%. We get a little more money than that. They give additional amounts of money, right, for a percentage, but you have to kind of continue to ask for additional funds to have that happen. We have asked multiple times, and I say we collectively, education agencies across the state and across the country, for the feds to help us and bump that number up so we see more funding. We have not seen that with the previous two administrations. We're hoping that this current federal administration will help us a little bit more with that. There is some optimism there. We'll see if that's the case, but 15.4 is probably a little high, even for rural areas, but it is closer to the average for rural areas that you see.
And do we know, are any of those student population transfer kids, or are they all interdistrict kids?
So when we took on transfer kids 7 or 8 years ago, one of the rules that they made was you can't distinguish between special ed or regular ed.
Okay.
And that's actually violating the law. So you do it based on size and availability in each building and in each grade level. So if we take a student, we can't ask that question until after we've got them. So we have taken on some special ed students, and we've also taken on some gen ed students. The percentages seem to be about the same based on the numbers that we saw, and then how many interdistrict transfers that we got. The number 15.4% seems to be about accurate, but I can certainly ask Ms. Johnson to find out a little bit more if you're interested.
No, not worth looking into any further. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Nope. All right. Thank you, Mr. Drill. Moving on to 6G is the Director of Education's report, Mr. Thatcher.
Hey, good evening. You have my report in front of you. And we were just talking about the math curriculum piece. You know, one of the coolest things about my new position is I get to work more with elementary after only being in high school for 30 years. And they're working incredibly hard. It's been a joy to be able to be a part of what's going on down there, especially in that new math curriculum. If you can imagine, this is definitely the right direction. We had kind of a piecemeal math curriculum before that. So this is definitely the right direction, but you've got new leadership in a lot of areas. You got a ton of new teachers, like Darren mentioned, about 50 to 60 new staff. And to do all that in this environment with kids coming back after not been in school for at least 18 months has been incredible challenge, but they're doing a phenomenal job. And being a part of that elementary, or being able to watch at least how many good things are going on at the elementary level, has been a real joy of this new position. Another piece that obviously impacts elementary is kind of that social emotional health. And we've talked about that over the last 18 months. How we're going to make sure that our kids get supported social emotionally, K-12 for sure, but especially like that K-8 group. And one of the things we did with our SIA dollars was purchase a diagnostic tool. We have great teachers that have compassion, great counselors, and they know how to reach out to families. But what about a way to systematically check in with kids and see how they're doing? And this DESTA tool really helps with that. We're just getting it off the ground. All our students and teachers and counselors are loaded. But the idea would be teachers at the elementary level will start there. Teachers would rate students on kind of their strengths and weaknesses, social emotionally, and then students would get a score, much like the diagnostic and math and reading that we have, a score on what their strengths are, what their deficits are, and how can we better serve these kids with everything they've gone through and the trauma that they've gone through over the last 18 months. So that is something we're going to do at K-12. It looks a little different at the high school, but man, we've never really had a way to track and systematically support these kids for everything they've gone through. So we're looking forward to that as well. Over the last year or so, we've talked about how one of the things we need to do a little more systematically as well as look at that equity piece. And so we've tailored some of our professional development up to this point to address that. And we've had Dr. Marks, a nationally known, well-recognized speaker on implicit bias, not just racial bias, although that's one of them, but all kinds of biases that we all come to the table with, whether it's teaching and learning or anywhere in our profession. And the other thing is we didn't want it to be just kind of a one and done thing. And here we checked this box and we went on. So we had the initial training in terms of how to recognize it back in service days in September. And then just this morning, we had another one on maybe how to mitigate it in teaching and learning and our community. And so I would say challenging, but a real balanced approach to take, just for us to be able to be more self-reflective and take a look at where our biases are as individuals and groups. And so we're looking forward to continuing to challenge our teachers and growing in an area like we ask our kids to do. There's some additional stuff in my report about grants, which will be a big chunk of what I'm going to take on. Dawn and Debbie Leday and Cindy Ganfield did a great job with the SIA grants with that one, and the ESSER grant, the ESSER 3 grant, which is going to be over $4 million, maybe $4.5 million over the next 3 years to help us continue to do great things with kids. It's a big lift in terms of the grant writing process and reporting, but there's a team of us that meet regularly, and I think those grants will continue to help us do great things for kids, even in this challenging environment. So that'll be ongoing discussion as we go through the year. Any other questions or comments?
Any questions?
Question on the the social emotion learning support
Yeah.
tool. Is that a computer program? What kind of tool is it? How does it work?
Yeah. So
what's the questions you ask, or how does that all work?
Yeah, good question. So obviously the social emotional support will still come from counselors, both our local counselors and then Trillium, which is a counseling service we contract with. But this is kind of a diagnostic tool, which is on the computer. So again, we load up all our teachers and our students. And in the elementary level, teachers are the raters. So they would log in just a few questions like what they know about their student, let's say in the 3rd grade class, their strengths, their weaknesses, some of the struggles they've seen, and just a quick kind of checklist diagnostic. Then there's kind of a rubric that goes through and scores are spit out to counselors and to administrators. Like it's not like the be all end all, but it gives you some some indicators, right? On things to look for, things to watch for, both in terms of what might be super challenging to a student, but also where their strengths, where can we go to get to strength? Where can we go to build up that kid? And of course, my world has mostly been in high school, and of course, kids have the behavioral challenges there. But I do, I got to be, just kind of go help out in Holmesville Elementary a couple of times, and there's some kids are coming with some serious challenges, and anything we can do to both target and then support teachers and administrators and counselors. So yes, computer program, and then that gives the counselors the best way forward, kind of a map going forward. It's a little bit different at the high school where the teachers don't rate the students because kids have maybe have 5, 6 teachers. At the high school, it's more of a self-report. Students would fill out a self-report, but we'll wait a little bit to get that off the ground.
Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you, Mr. Thatcher. Appreciate it. Okay, so before we go on to 6H, Assistant Superintendent's Report, there is a 6I, and so I'm going to show you a picture. I just drew it, and I'm a horrible drawer, but there's a little arrow, if you guys can see on mine. It's kind of up in the very top left corner of your screen is a refresh arrow. It's kind of a circle with an arrow on it. Hit that on your screen, and it will refresh the page. So if you're not showing 6I, that should refresh so you all see 6I also. Did I do that right, Cheryl?
Worked for me.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So then on that, we will go to 6H, which is Ms. Moorfield.
Good evening, everybody. I have my report. It's kind of odd. I've never done a personnel report to the board, but since I've been able to hand off the curriculum side to Matt, I figured I would provide you with some information on how the start of the school year is going and kind of what we've been working on. So as I said in my report, this school year by far has been the most challenging school year of my entire career. Not only dealing with all the COVID stuff, but we have also hired 55 new staff members, soon to be probably over 70 by the time we get all positions filled. In my report, I also acknowledged Jennifer Thatcher, HR specialist, because she has been amazing. She is responsible for onboarding every single employee. She collects all of their information. She puts all the information into the computer, make sure they signed up for insurance, make sure they're in payroll. So I just wanted to make sure that I recognized her for all of her efforts. She's had a lot of late nights and a lot of weekends, and I couldn't do my job without her. We did talk a little bit earlier about the substitute shortage. That is a state issue. TSPC, which is the licensing agency for teachers, did adopt a temporary rule that allows individuals without a degree to apply for an emergency substitute license, as long as a school district pays for that license and sponsors them. So if you know of anybody who maybe doesn't have a degree, but they're interested in substituting, please have them call me, get in touch with me. The biggest issue, besides all of the hiring that we've done this year, really what I've been working on since the end of August has been the COVID vaccine requirement. So as you're aware, late in August, there was an OAR that was adopted. It's a temporary rule that requires teachers, school staff, and volunteers, as well as anyone who provides services to any of our students, provide proof that they're fully vaccinated against COVID-19, or they provide documentation of a medical or religious exception. I started meeting with folks on September 17th. I met with over 70 staff members, coaches, and volunteer coaches who requested an exception. And at this point in time, about 77% of our staff is vaccinated. The other 23% of our staff have requested some type of exception. I'm not going to go over, I did include in the report the different types of accommodations or additional safety precautions that we've asked those staff that are unvaccinated to put into place. And it could be all of the list. It could be a portion of the list. It really depends on what their job is and who they're in contact with. Let's see. After October 18th, anyone who is either not fully vaccinated or they don't have an approved exception cannot be employed by the district. So I'm hoping that I hear back from some of our staff members as to what their status is, so we can move forward. We also have to have our contractors that provide services to our district. They have to sign a letter of attestation stating that, you know, they're making sure that the people that they send out to work in our district are either vaccinated or have an approved exception. I think that is it as far as my report is concerned. Do you have any questions?
Dawn, I'm going to ask you a question about the COVID testing for folks that ask for the exemption. How often do they have to be tested, and who's paying for that test?
So we are not requiring a weekly test. The Oregon Health Authority did provide an option for unvaccinated, well, any staff member to get a weekly test, and that is paid for by the state of Oregon. However, the process of doing the test was actually really cumbersome. I signed up to do the test myself because I wanted to know what staff were going to be asked to do. And the biggest issue with the test is, number one, it's a nasal swab. And the nasal swabs are sterilized using ethylene oxide, which can cause cancer. And so we had some staff that were very concerned about using a nasal swab that had been sterilized using that method. The other piece that would have been really difficult for our staff to do is the tests have to be mailed, but they have to be, you have to take them to a UPS store. So with most of our staff being, you know, some of our staff are very rural. The closest UPS store is commercial in Salem. And it really was just too cumbersome to ask our staff to do that. So we believe that the other accommodations that we have in place will continue to keep our staff and students safe.
So the answer is there's no testing mandate of any kind.
There is correct. There is no requirement for any of our staff to have a weekly COVID test.
Okay, so if anybody's unvaccinated, if they follow the protocols that you've laid out there, then we're good to go.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Just because I know the vaccine mandate is a really tough thing for a lot of people. And just to be clear, at the district level here, we have any discretion? Do we have any authority about that at all at the district level?
About the vaccine mandate?
Mm-hmm.
No, we're required by OAR to implement the vaccine requirement, which means that staff either have to provide proof of being fully vaccinated or they have to go through an exception process with me.
Right. So there's no decision for us to make on that at all whatsoever. There's no flexibility, anything.
There is not.
I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah. Nope. Good question.
Any other questions? Nope. All right. Thank you, Ms. Moorfield. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going on to 6I, Plant Operation Manager's Report. Mr. Lule.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
I've compiled a list here, and some of this is older stuff since it was not on the report last year. So I put them together. So they're not really in a particular order, but I'll read through those. And if somebody has a question, they can either stop me or we can ask the question at the end. This is kind of what we've been working on, what's been completed since we've last year and a half or 2 years. Beginning with completed the radon testing district-wide, built a new testing room at the east office, replaced storm drain lines at the junior high back parking lot, replaced 2 maintenance vehicles, purchased a new used tech van, purchased a new tilt trailer used to transport our mowers from school to school, installed a new section of roofing at the 3-5 building, installed the new LED lighting in the junior high and new LED in the high school parking lot, installed new drainage lines along the high school grass along the new high school where we were flooding, updated the fire department connections outside the new school, developed plans for a new nitrogen reduction upgrade for our septic system, added a COVID health room at Turner, installed carpet at the Cloverdale Library, plexiglass installed district-wide, finished the wall coverings in the old high school, got rid of the old carpet, remodeled the workroom in the high school, turned it into a meeting room, refinished the gym floors, which we do every year or try to. We put a new boiler in at the Birkeland pool, got rid of a bunch of debris from the ice storm, which was everywhere on district-wide. Replaced the railroad ties that were rotting at the 3-5 building parking lot and got rid of all the trees that were there and put new bark dust in. New striping on the parking lots. We just put new gutters and downspouts at the vocation building. Repainted numerous classrooms district-wide, our usual shrub trimming and pressure washing, and did our routine work on the HVAC through the district and getting ready for the seismic upgrade coming up next year. So if you have any questions on any of those, I can give you an answer, hopefully.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Lule? No? All right, Mr. Lule, I'll ask you, is there anything that you need from us as far as stuff that's other than money, of course? Is there anything on your wants list?
Well, there's a few items that are going to be coming up, like, some of our mowers, the big mower is very aged and deteriorating. So at some point, if we could find a good used one, we'd be happy with that. But they're just kind of hard to come by. And then we're going to try to keep up on our roof repairs. We held off on the 3-5 just because we were open for the bond. So we've been able to patch what we can. And then we'll have asphalt, that'll be needing repairing. So that's just a few items that'll be coming up. Other than that, we're pretty good shape.
Okay. Well, I think it's fair to say, I know money's always a hot commodity, but we appreciate what you do with the resources we do have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks for your son's help too, Brad, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, I saw pressure washing.
I
I saw pressure washing on that list and I thought, oh man, that's not his favorite task. I can tell you that.
Oh, he's a joy to have on the crew. I enjoy it.
Well, good. He enjoyed
Hard
the heck
worker
out of
too.
it. So thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Lule. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
All right. All right. We're on to 7, discussion and communications. 7A is personnel, Ms. Moorfield.
All right, so you have 2 resignations in your packet. One is from Matthew Clark. He is our choir teacher, and the other is Trevor Lang. He's been working, helping at the junior high, doing some like student assistance, not counseling, but kind of assisting in those areas as needed. So we do have the choir position posted. We have not had any takers. And we do have Mr. Lang's position posted as well.
Okay. Any questions on that? All right, then moving on to 7A2, new hire recommendations.
And then we have a couple of new hires. Tara Blythe, she is a temporary 2nd grade teacher at Almsville. She is actually one of our instructional assistants that happens to be going through an education program right now. So I was able to get an emergency license for Tara so that we could put her in the classroom. And I hear she's doing a great job. And then the next one is Carly Richards. and she will be filling the position of the temporary special ed resource teacher at the high school.
Okay.
Good.
Then moving on, we'll go to, any questions on that?
No.
No. All right, then 7B, Division 22 assurances, Mr. Drill.
So every year, we are in the process of making sure that we as in the district live up to what the standards are for Oregon Department of Education and all their requirements. This is a document that a number of people in the district beyond me go through and make sure that based on the rule and the OAR that we are in that process of making sure that we are in compliance. They used to have that at a different time of year. They moved it to this time of year. So we missed it a little bit last year, not personally. The state said, wait till this time of year for the following year. So they gave us a bit of a break last year, but now we're back to doing it. Cheryl puts it all together. We have all of our staff go through the process. And at the very moment, we are in compliance with all of the requirements that the state is asking. This is an ongoing tension between a number of districts and the state. The districts always want fewer requirements and standards, and the state always wants more because they're usually tied to funding. But at the moment, based on the ones that they are asking us for, we are in compliance.
So, Mr. Drill, why are some of them waived? I see we're in compliance with everything that's not waived, but what causes a waive on those?
So if the state says, this specific one is going to be waived. So we talked a little bit about if you slide down, right, and it says essential skills, right? So there was a conversation a couple of months ago that the essential skills piece where we were testing kids specific, that was waived because the state is asking for a new set of requirements and tests there. So they've given us a window of time. So it's waived for that period of time. There's not something we need to do.
Okay.
We still with regard to that issue, right, we still issue grades, particularly in the junior high and obviously in the high school, so they can get a high school diploma. So that's still there, but what they're talking about is the additional tests and things like that. So that's waived. So if it's waived for one of the years, it'll say that. Otherwise, we are in compliance with the rest of them.
Well, nice. I like seeing all the in compliance. So thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions?
No.
Okay. Then we will now move on to 7C, which is the local contract review board hearing. So Mr. Pillar, am I right at this point that we are now opening the hearing for the local contract review board?
Yes, you are. And once you open the hearing, I have just a quick comment and then you can close the hearing.
All right, so we'll now open it. So let's have your comment.
So we published the findings of fact in the Daily Journal of Commerce per the Oregon Public Contracting Rules, and we received no comments from that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Cheryl, but we did not receive any written comments from the public. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so there has been no comments submitted or no requests for details on the findings of fact. So therefore, I feel comfortable in recommending that you close the hearing at this time and then personally recommend a due pass on the resolution.
Is it standard that we would have no comments, or, and if this had been 2 years ago, would you have had comments on it?
No, I've never had a comment in my career on the local contract review board.
Okay. All right. Any other questions regarding the local contract review board hearing? All right, then we will now, the local contract review board hearing is now closed. Okay. And with that said, we will move on to, are we on to 7C or 7.2 public comment? No, we did all that one. Okay, we're on to 8. Information items, student transfers, Mr. Drill.
Okay, so in front of you, as we talked about earlier a couple of times this evening, this is a quick report with regard to interdistrict transfers over the course of the last 10 years. So the incoming folks come from various districts across our area. The outgoing are the number of students that left Cascade to go somewhere else. So some history on that. We have always said for people that wanted to leave to go ahead and go. The only time that we hold people up is when somewhere around 2016, 2017, 2015, 16, we started to hold up people that wanted to go to an online charter school. And there is a process by the state of Oregon that allows us, after we have a 3% of our total number, that's the level in which we can say, hold on a minute, particularly after the 17-18 school year, we also built an online program that Marie Thompson helps us with over at the Opportunity Center. So we essentially have the same type of program that other places do. So once we reach our 3% cap, we say no. A number of parents sometimes appeal that to the state. The state can choose to let those students go or not. But that was from a previous board. A couple of you, I think Karen was on that, when we had a conversation. I'm kind of looking to see, Brett, you might have still been on that as well, that we basically said, once we reach our 3% cap, right, we are asking people to at least take a look at our program before we move on. We also asked the state to kind of make that final decision instead of us. We, again, at that point, it's just a choice. What you see in front of you are interdistrict transfers to other school districts only, outgoing and incoming. And as you notice, we hit a high water mark at 2018, 2019. We've had conversations before about Turner. And one of the things that we had a conversation with the prior principal was, do we grow that school? And it ended up growing a little faster than we anticipated, but we did grow that school along the way. We went from 1 to 2 teachers per grade to all 2 teachers per grade, and now we're 2 to 3 teachers per grade. And we're going to need to be able to add a 3rd teacher in 4th and 5th grade to make sure we have 3 teachers at every grade level over time. What we're trying to do now is to limit our transfers on incoming. And so slowly that number from 2018-19 down to 21-22 is a decrease in going in the right direction. But again, it's a balance. We want to make sure that we continue to decrease that number, but at the same time, make sure that we have enough people coming into our school district that we pay for the things that we need. So there's a balance to that. And the reason why we even started it in the first place, if you go back to 10-11 and 11-12, we were in need of some students that were incoming because of the financial constraints that almost every school district, particularly ours at the time, were under with regard to the downturn in the economy at the time. We do not have that problem now. We are one of the growing districts, rural districts in the state. So we now need to have conversations about how it is we continue to limit that number as we go. So Lisa brought up earlier about Turner, how that works. And so this number that you see is a number for each school year. It's not a cumulative number. 126 transfers incoming are from other districts across all 12 grade levels, actually 13, kindergarten through 12th grade. So that's the balance that we're trying to accomplish. The other last piece of it that I've had some people ask for, and we finally got that information updated. We had information from the ESD, but they're the ones that track our homeschool numbers. And this is a district that's always had a higher than a normal around us homeschool percentage. We've always said, hey, we think we have a great product here, but we have a number of people that say, hey, we'd rather homeschool our kids, more so at the elementary level and less so in the middle and high school. As the students get older, we see more kids come to our district, particularly around, I'm guessing, and most people usually say it this way, is that anecdotally, it's one thing for me to teach 3rd grade math and English. It's another thing for me to teach trigonometry and make sure that I do it appropriately. So there's a balance to that. So our number a year ago for homeschool kids was 198 of our students. And this year's number is 309. So it's gone up a little over 100 kids. Those different issues are, one, we were concerned about the COVID situation, either because we are required to wear masks or because you're not wearing masks as appropriately as we think you should. I've heard from both sides of that aisle. And so some people are choosing to be online, or they're choosing to go ahead and homeschool until the COVID pandemic works its way out. And then we will see some of those folks back. Other people have moved into our district, bought houses in our district. They came from other places where they were already homeschooling their kids. So they chose to continue to do that. It works well for their family setup. Some parents are working from home. Even more parents are working from home because of the COVID situation. So they're able to manage that process. And then we also have a few people that always are concerned exactly what it is that we are teaching from a curricular standpoint, whether it's health education or what books we read or things like that. And as we have said before, we are always at a place where we can make sure that we would prefer students to come to our campus. We really believe that K-12, we have a great product. And if students don't want to be, parents don't want their students to be part of a specific lesson, they can always opt out. So we've built those kinds of things in, but in rural districts, you see a higher percentage of folks that are homeschooling their kids, particularly right now. So that's kind of the overall issue around interdistrict transfers. Ruth, you asked earlier about what are the percentages, about how we can do that. We can break some of that information down. We used to be able to track it by district. That does take a lot of time, but we can certainly get you that information if you're interested in that process. So additional questions or comments from the board about this information?
Any questions?
Yeah. So Darren, you said we're trying now to start to limit the interdistrict transfers. How do you do that, or what criteria do you use to limit that? It's all just numbers per class. If there's numbers per class, we do it. If there's not, we don't.
Right.
Or other criteria you can do to help.
There's numbers per class, right? Because as I said earlier, David, you cannot discriminate between a special ed student or a student that is a 4.0 student or the great football quarterback or whatever the case may be. Those rules came into play about 8 or 9 years ago when a couple of districts near the metro area, right, were happy to take the great football quarterback, but not so much the special education student. And special ed parents reminded the state, and the state reminded us. So our balance really is about taking a look at each building, right, and limiting the number of students at each grade level. Right, Turner has been the most difficult school we've dealt with, right along with the junior high. Right, how do you manage the numbers based on its size? Lisa, as she has mentioned, is now out of space. To jump 40 students this year, right, was a bigger jump as compared to the last 2 previous year when they hovered around 350 to 355. So you're taking an educated guess, but it is a guess at some level, because you got to also find the balance, right? If you have more students, you need more staff. But if you put the staff before the students, then suddenly you're out of balance financially. So you got to be able to find that balance to it. We have always been able to enjoy being a little bit ahead and making sure we have the students before we have the staff. But I freely admit that we are going in the next couple of years to have to find a better balance to that. And school districts across the state struggle with that. As you can see, in 2018-19, we had 167 in, right? And now we have 126 in. So we've begun to make that transition back. To chop it off quickly, right, does cause us some issues. Once we reach a limit on a specific grade level, we end up doing basically a lottery. So we have, hey, we're only going to take 75 kids at kindergarten at Turner, or 78 kids, and we have 85 total, right? We have to take our own kids that live in the district first, and then the ones that are outside the district, if our limit's going to be 75, right? And there's 18 kids that want in and we only have 6 slots, then it becomes a lottery. And we draw names out of that. Cheryl works very diligently and has support and help to make sure that we do it correctly and we do it by the rules. So that makes for a difficult process. The other thing that we've noticed is that the outgoing has shrunk, right? So in 2018-19, we had 81 and now we're down 36. So essentially we brought in less than, with 40 fewer kids, but more about 50 fewer kids have left us. So that's a plus 10 approximately problem. We're about 10 more kids than we thought. We've been averaging somewhere between 55 to 60, as you see in 2019 and 2020. We see those numbers, and suddenly this year outgoing is only 36. So while we had a lot of people very concerned and saying out loud, you're going to lose kids, and we did with regard to homeschool, and we did lose some kids, not as many as we thought. A lot of parents see that we have a good product. We graduate very high rates of kids at Cascade. And so they look at that compared to where they're at around us. I mean, when you have a graduation rate that is higher than West Salem, South Salem, or Sprague, right? People tend to pay attention to that kind of thing. Plus, we're a small rural school district where we can pay attention to each and every kid. So it's.
That's what I was going to ask, Darren. Are you allowed, or do we survey the reasons for the requested transfer? Are we allowed to do that, or do we do that?
We have never done it before. We can start to do that now. We can start to do that for the upcoming year. Cheryl, were you going to say something? I thought I heard somebody. Sorry about that. We can begin to do that as well. The reasons why. What we normally get is, my kid has been a little bit lost in a larger school district. We would like to see them come here. The other part of it is, I'm now working in your school district. Is there a way to bring my child here as well from an issue around, I don't have any way to deal with after school care. That's another issue as well. A number of our staff don't live in our district. They live in Salem Kaiser, they live in Silverton, they live in Albany. So they bring their child here, particularly if they're an elementary kid. So we're trying to figure out that balance. With a shrinking number of staff that we choose from, if they have a couple of kids, one of the questions we've begun to get asked is there a way for me to bring my child to your school district if I get hired? So we're trying to figure that out as well. The rules don't necessarily help us with that. What they do say is that you got to make it fair for everybody across the board. So first we look at the school, second we look at the grade level, and then third we're going to need to start having these conversations about which way it goes. How are we going to take this information and start to limit that number, and also at the same time be financially smart about how we handle it? That's got to play a part in the process. Other questions?
Darren, I want to follow up, and this is quick. If let's assume space is not a concern, let's just assume Turner has lots of open space. How many kids do we need to see before we can justify adding a teacher? What's our break point on cost for a teacher? How many students?
Usually at the amount that the state gives us, somewhere between 23 to 26 kids is what we need to be able to staff a classroom, be able to have the support, make sure the instructional assistants help. How much additional help do you need in the cafeteria with regard to all those other pieces? So financially, if you're looking at purely financial, you're running 23 to 26 kids to make sure that it works.
To every time we add a new teacher for a new classroom.
Generally, that's the cost. Some are more, right? If you have special education situations,
No.
or
that's what I was asking. So you answered it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, John.
Darren, you've mentioned 2 or 3 times that we need to begin to have these conversations, and I can tell that it is a nuanced, complex web of things that have huge implications for families and teachers and facilities and all that. I'm beginning to see all that. How do you envision those conversations happening so that we don't end up against a time crunch kind of thing?
I think the conversations, as I've talked to other school district superintendents, right, and not very many have this issue. They have it, but one of the things that continues to get brought up is what is our purpose and what is our vision, right? So we have said over and over again for the last 7 or 8 years, up until about 2 or 3 years ago, we welcome other people because we really have something special. We want to be able to offer those kinds of things. And quickly, many people that have become interdistrict transfers and now are our kids, after 1 year, according to the Department of Ed, they are officially our kids, right? The only other times that we even ask for them to do the paperwork is when they transition from elementary to middle, and then from middle to high school. And then we have those kids for the rest of the time. So the question is, what is that vision? If we are finally at a place where we are out of space, right, then I think the vision has to look a little bit different as to about how it is we're going to approach our schools. Particularly if Turner says we're going to unlock another 20 acres and build more houses, particularly if Almsville says we're going to do that as well, right? When Dan Peterson started and I started here, there were 6 or 7 classrooms open at Turner, particularly right after the bond, where we were able to have some space. We were out of space. So I recognize that we are going to add the 4 modulars that will create some space, but essentially all that does for us is help us for the next couple of years. That's all it really does for us. And I'm just talking about the growth that we'll see internally from Turner based on what we know with regard to the houses that will or need to be filled up, and secondarily, the apartments that they built. In Almsville, it's the same thing. They're almost full with regard to all the houses, but they are already beginning to talk about annexing some more property to be able to do that again. In Almsville right now, we have space, but it truly is in the 3-5 building that we have discussed multiple times, right? In the junior high, we are out of space when it comes to finding classrooms. So this is a conversation we'll have to continue to have. I get that when we said we were going to go out for a bond and people said, well, you wouldn't have that problem if you didn't let so many kids in, right? I get that. But at the same time, we had a financial problem 6 or 7, 8 years ago that we needed to solve. And that was one way to solve the problem without laying off more people or making our class sizes larger, right? So the way for us to solve that is not going to be quick. It can't be a sharp cut. It's got to be a gradual conversation. So John, I'm going to need to have a conversation with you guys as a board about what the vision looks like. I want the principals to be involved in that conversation about what that is. They deal with a daily basis. Debbie now and Lisa now have to deal with those two things, and our other schools, Cloverdale is not far behind. They really have one additional classroom left, and then Cloverdale has some issues as well. And we are going to have to figure it out. And the high school isn't that much farther behind as it is. So we can look at this all it is, but the reality is our larger percentage now is people that have actually moved in. That's our bigger issue. So one step, John, is the vision. The next step of it is how do we continue to curtail this number? And is the rate we're curtailing it the right thing, or do we need to do it even more? If we do it even more, certain siblings, right, that we've let the older child in will not be able to come into this district, or somebody that we have hired, right, they will not be able to bring their kids in, and they might turn us down with regard to teaching or working in our district. So we have to try to find those balances.
So that's you and the principals basically figuring out a plan and bringing us along.
Yes, and we're going to need to ask what you guys are really interested in. We're also going to need to check in with our parents and with our staff about how this works, right? But generally, somebody basically says, well, it's full in my building, you should not do that. I get it, right? And it's not full somewhere else. I understand that as well. So how do you find that balance, and where is it? Where does that work? But it's more nuanced, as you said, than that, right? It's a little more difficult in the process.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Drill? All right, moving on to 8B, COVID numbers report. Mr. Drill.
Okay, so some fun conversations tonight. This is what I wanted to share with you guys. I want to first of all thank Krista Gray and Kathleen Johnson, continue to work with us on a daily basis. You heard Mr. Rasmussen earlier tonight talk about sending out those letters. The letters that our families receive add up to what you see in front of you here. It shows here that as of 10/7/2021, we've had 9 cases, positive cases in Almsville, and 23 students quarantined. Again, all of this process is done by Oregon Health Authority and Marion County Health Authority, and they are assisted by our nursing staff. We go through a very clear process as set by the state. It's not something that we have come up with. It's not overly done. It's not underly done. It is exactly what the state has asked us to do, and that's what we follow. Cloverdale has 0 and 0. Turner shows 22 positive cases and 32 quarantined. The junior high shows 14 positive cases and 10 quarantined. The high school is 15 and 8. The Opportunity Center shows 2 and 0. And then our adult transitions program that Kathleen's talked about, our 18 to 21-year-old students in special education, shows 1 positive case and 2 quarantined. Now, please remember, this is from the first day of school up through last week. And a number of those positive cases started at the beginning of the year. And so now they are out of their time period to being home, and they're back in school, along with same with the quarantine. So it's kind of a rolling number. My goal will be is to give you a monthly update each month that we meet so that you can see what that looks like. Questions on that?
Darren, how are we trending compared to other districts?
We're about the same for Mid-Willamette Valley. We see other areas of the state doing a little bit better. We see other areas of the state doing worse. Marion County has not done well overall, but we are trending, I would guess, just a little bit better. If you look at positive cases and you take that number, that total number of positive cases, and divide it by all of our students and all of our staff together, right? I said earlier, a little under 2%, right at 2%. And with the quarantine cases, just a little right around 2.5 to 2.7%. So we're right about average when I talk to other superintendents about what their quarantine and their positive cases look like. So what that tells me is, one, when the state says, right, if you follow protocols, there shouldn't be a large number of cases in schools, and that we should be able to have schools, kids come to school 5 days a week, full days. That answer seems to be true. And two, there's always room for us to get a little bit better about what those protocols are, right? Mr. Rasmussen mentioned it. As of the 7th, all those positive cases have come to us from outside our district. So the time in which Marion County or Oregon Health Authority will begin to talk to us about shutting a school down is when they start to see cases passed inside a school, from student to student or from staff to student or the other way around. We have not seen that as of the 7th. And to my understanding, we haven't seen it through today. I get updates on a very, very regular basis. So far, so good. However, right, we got to go walk through the process and make sure that we're taking care of our staff and our students and check in. Over the course of the last 6 weeks, we have heard through the grapevine that we have had at least one death in our community with regard to COVID. There might be one or two others, but that has not been confirmed. So we are watching carefully and listening carefully to our principals, to our staff, and trying to make sure that they're as safe as they can be, because these are the issues we have to deal with. And we're trying to make this, on top of all the stuff you heard tonight about curriculum and instruction, this is another layer of things that we're trying to handle along the way.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Drill? Nope. All right, thank you, Mr. Drill. Moving on to 9 is public comments. Real quick, since this meeting is via Zoom due to COVID and the ease of the spread of the Delta variant, all public comments must have been submitted in written form to the board secretary by 3:30 p.m. today. We have one comment in our board notes here from Jen Woodward. Ms. Woodward, thank you for your comments. Mr. Drill, anything you want to add on that?
Yes, would like to let the board know that Ms. Woodward and I had a great conversation last week about this. It was addressed to me and to the school board as well. So I wanted to reach out, and we had a great conversation. Ms. Woodward wanted me to let you guys know that she believed, and I think it's a good idea, that we read people's names. If this is how we're going to do our board meetings, that reading out the names of people that send in correspondence from her perspective is important. So we say it out loud from a transparency standpoint. I think that was a really good idea. And then the second thing she wanted to make sure that that it was shared was that you, the board members, that is your job to protect all the children of this district. That is important, that she makes sure that she got that point across, that protection of our kids across this district is important. I really appreciated the conversation I had with her, and I look forward to having more conversations if she feels the need to do that. And I will also reach out to her if I have additional questions for her as well.
So, Mr. Drill, I want to ask on that about the comments that the public gives us. They're due to Cheryl by 3:30 the day of the meeting. Are those comments then posted or available online for the public to view after the meeting?
I need to Cheryl, can you answer that question?
Yes, so I get them, and it's just like tonight, I had to post a couple last minute things.
Right.
So I just post everything to the board packet.
And so can anyone from the public then go on to those and read those comments?
Absolutely.
Okay, so while we will mention their names of people who submit us written comment, it's available for anyone and everyone to see after the meeting as well.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. All right, thank you for that, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Drill, anything else on the public comment portion?
Yeah, correspondence 9A. We have correspondence 9A there.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation in the last board meeting about correspondence that came to the board. And I wanted to give you an update. One, we said that we would talk about that in public, and that's what I'm going to do. And two, there have been developments there with regard to that. So we discussed a letter from another member of the public last month regarding a budget committee member. Since our last board meeting, that budget committee member has chosen to step down from the committee. And according to our legal counsel, there is no longer any need to address this issue any further. So the school board can now appoint a new person to the budget committee, and I would suggest and recommend that you begin your consideration starting in January of 2022. So you can take time to think about how you would like to process that. But we do not need a budget member placed onto that budget committee until right around April, March or April, before we get started with the budget.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for the update on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then moving on, we will go to our resolutions. Bear with me here. Okay. Agenda item 10A, resolution regarding resignations.
Be resolved, the Cascade Board of Education moves to approve the resignations of Matthew Clark, choir teacher, and Trevor Lang, junior high teacher, as recommended by the administration.
Second.
10A, resolution regarding resignations has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Agenda item 10B, resolution regarding new hire recommendations.
Be it resolved, the Cascade Board of Education moves to approve the hire of Tara Blythe, temporary elementary teacher, and Carly Richards, temporary sped teacher, as recommended by the administration.
Second.
10B, resolution regarding new hire recommendations has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 10C, resolution regarding Division 22 assurances.
Be it resolved, the Cascade Board of Education moves to acknowledge receipt of the annual Division 22A assurances report. The report was prepared and reported to the public via the board meeting and is already posted to the district website.
Second.
10C, resolution regarding Division 22 assurances has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 10D, resolution regarding findings of fact.
Be it resolved, the Cascade Board of Education director is receiving no inquiries for the findings of facts and hearing no issues during the LCRB hearing. Hereby direct staff to move forward with the issuance of the RFQ for CMGC services for the junior high seismic project.
Second.
10D, resolution regarding findings of fact has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 10, what would that be? E, resolution approving amended appropriations of expenditures not requiring a supplemental budget in 21-22 budget.
Whereas ORS 294.311(3) provides for the preparation of an adopted budget for the fiscal year 2021-22 and further allows the amendment of appropriation levels of that budget through resolution when certain conditions exist, and the following.
Can just say as presented.
As presented.
Second.
And I second that motion.
10E, resolution approving amended appropriations of expenditures not requiring a supplemental budget in 21-22 budget has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And I think that's the only one we have. Is that, did I get them all, Cheryl? Was that the last one? I think so.
Yes, you did.
Okay, wonderful. And I do have to say, by being not of the school, there's a lot of acronyms, and I really love all the acronyms we use. I only wish we could use more of them. So on that note, is there any future agenda items, Mr. Drill, that we need to address?
We will continue to take a look at Oregon School Boards Association reminds us what we need to make sure we cover month by month. Cheryl's on top of that. So we'll make sure that that gets taken care of. We'll continue to update you on the COVID cases and or the quarantine cases. We'll keep that in the process. And then we'll begin to figure out how it is we want to move forward with regard to interdistrict transfers and continue to keep that in the conversation. We may not do that next month in November, but we will certainly start in January to try to figure out how it is you would like to see us move forward. And we'll get input from our building administration as well.
All right, sounds good. I would like to make one last comment. I would like to say thank you to Mr. Drill and to the entire Cascade staff. While the time we're in is not fun and there's no script to follow, I think that the entire Cascade staff is doing a fabulous job. And I think that I personally, and we as a board, support all that you're doing, and it is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, any last minute items?
Brett, I just challenge you. You asked me to be a school bus driver. You should think about being a substitute teacher.
I have thought about it.
All right.
Sounds like the kindergarten in Turner is waiting for you.
Yeah, I have thought about it, and that's it. So I agree. I think that'd be a fabulous job for you, David.
I'll think about it.
All right, very good. All right, anything else, gang? All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
you,
Have a
Brett.
good evening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.